Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Hey, thanks. Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity, and hopefully the next 30 minutes, 40 minutes will be useful. And also thanks to the Tony. Like it's really the pleasant. It's really a good session. Like I enjoyed it. It's a little bit of my comfort zone, but I liked it. Yeah. So so this talk is about event storming, and so this will be less creative than Tony's, and it will be slightly more enterprising. And, has anyone used the event storming at work? And anyone who knows event storming? Yeah, okay. And are we all developers? Okay. Yeah, so just I want to share our journey from the way we worked at ClearBank. By the way, we are recruiting, and we are opening an office in Bristol. So please feel free to talk to. So we have our engineering manager, engineering director, Tom, head of engineering, yeah, and Sam, yeah. So the head of the Bristol office. So please feel free to talk to us. So I am a principal developer at ClearBank at the moment, and my experience is around like a cloud-based event-driven microservice. And personally, I'm interested in domain-driven design and functional programming. I'm just ordinary developer, yeah. And I'm from the South Korea, actually. I've been here for 20 years, but I learned English from Americans. So like I worked in the U.S. Army, like South Korea has a U.S. Army base, like Germany, and then I worked there for 2 years. So I picked up American, and then so when I first came here, like I use a lot of American slang, so when I see people like, hey, what's up, and so instead of saying bye, like I say, hey, take it easy, and my British friend didn't like it, and so anyway, yeah. So hope this doesn't happen in the next 30 minutes. Yeah. Sorry. So the topics we are going to cover is event storming and designing workflows with Mediator. Has anyone used Mediator? Okay. Yeah, it's cool. And then the practical issues when we use a Mediator and when we use the event storming. So briefly about the event storming. So event storming is kind of the workshop that the domain expert and business people and developers or business analysts kind of work together to discover the events and what drives those events and how we can construct a system using those events, the journey through the events. So usually large meeting room with a certain size where 6 to 8 people can meet up together, and developers and domain experts from the business side. So when developer has any question, then they can answer the questions. And because often the problem is bigger than our small whiteboard, so if it's possible, just provide unlimited modeling space by putting some paper on the wall. By the way, feel free to ask any question and stop me and ask any question. And then explore the domain together, but start from the domain event. And then let the domain event guide you through the journey, through the workflow. And also from the event, so like we define the event, for example, so at ClearBank, like when a customer sign up a form, so in our workshops, we say, okay, now the customer created. So that's the event. That's the first event. And so in order for the customer to be created, there is a user action, which is signing up the form. So that's the command. So define the event, to discover the event first, and then try to find out what's happening around that event. And then when we discover all the events and the actions around it, then the aggregate, the domain object will emerge naturally. So who's doing the domain, who's trying to do domain-driven design? Okay, yeah, it's cool, yeah. So the aggregate is, is like a domain object, and so usually the aggregate, there's an aggregate root, like a customer, and customer has other aggregates. It can be in our case, we had the identity, which belongs to the customer. So how did we do the event storming? So we use these conventions. So actor, command, domain event, and aggregate. So the actor, sign up the form. So I want to open the account, and then they fill in their details. And so that will create command, which is create customer command. And when the customer is created, so the event will happen, so which is customer created event. And when the customer is created, so we raise integration event, which is we use the service bus on Azure. So if we use AWS, it can be SNS topic message. So it raises integration event to notify other systems. And then also there is another command. So the check customer identity. So because we are bank, and also the customers, our customers are protected by FSCS, which is like their fund, their money up to like 70,000 is 85 is protected by the government. So, but like because our customers created through the provider, because we are the backend. So, for example, one customer is created through Tide, and then the same customer, maybe they use another service, and then the same customer can come to us. So even though they are created, so we create the two customers, but they have the same identity because they are the same person. So we use data like their first name, last name, address, and their passport number, and those things. Then we need to match that actually these two customers are the same identity. So in our system, so we need to check the customer identity. So if they are the same identity, then we create a new, if it's a new customer, then we create a new identity in our system. And then this is event, so new identity created event. And then, so we raise another integration event, like raise new identity created event. And if it's the existing customer just through another provider, then we issue another command like update new identity, and then identity updated event happens, and we raise identity updated event to notify other systems. So does it make sense so far? Yeah. So
why are you listing the bus events with business people?
Actually, yeah. So it was for our developers' benefit. Yeah. So when we did actually workshop, like we didn't go those details. So we just defined. We just defined the customer created event, and then new identity created event, and identity updated event. And also the order of the books was a little bit different. So we discovered event first, and then we defined the commands around it. So the order was a bit misleading. Any other question? Yeah. So when we see those events, so we can see that actually, so this part is about the customer, and this part is about identity. So like the aggregate, the domain object emerge like this. So we can see, okay, we need a two domain object, which are customer and identity. Yeah? Does it make sense? So like we define the aggregate, customer and identity. So now we have the events, and then we have aggregates, and we know the commands. So let's translate this into the code, the actual code. So we have a working APIs. And to do that, our tool of choice is Mediator. So why do we choose Mediator? Is first, the Mediator has a syntax of command and command handler and event handler. So you can send a command and you write command handler, and command handler will be called, and then it will just do the corresponding, it will do the actions it requires. And you create event and you you publish event, and the event handler, you can write multiple event handlers. So command handler just responds to one command, and event handlers, you can write multiple event handlers that respond to one event. And all those, the handlers are executed in in the same process in memory. So it's not like a service bus or SNS handlers. It's more in-process message handlers. Does it make sense? Yeah. So, and another benefit of the Mediator is the often, like the first one, so we create a lot of object and service classes, and sometimes you don't know what's happening because they call each others and they call one another's, and so it becomes like a chaotic kind of, the execution flow is not clear. It becomes like a chaos. So we don't like it, and the Mediator can help. It can convert the chaotic interaction into nice workflow, like the second image. So we want the business logic to be the intuitive workflow rather than hard to figure out the chaotic interactions. So that's another benefit of a Mediator. Any questions so far? Then, yeah.
Okay, you've talked about in some cases you want to replace choreography with orchestration. You want something where the order lives.
Yeah.
Right. So that's basically imperative programming.
Yeah. Okay.
So what is Mediator doing for you in this case? Is it giving you semantics around compensated transactions, retry? Why bother?
So so you can write us some service class, and then you can do one by one in sequence in an imperative way. But so that's your kind of choice of style, isn't it? And it doesn't. So the class, the service.
What you're doing.
Yeah. So the service class itself doesn't encourage that behavior. You write the code in an imperative way, but Mediator encourage you to kind of it's hard to write not imperative code with a Mediator. Kind of the design of the Mediator kind of enforce you a certain design choice.
Okay.
Does it make sense? Yeah. Kind of it's like a service class is kind of generic tool, and a Mediator is kind of tool kind of optimized for the sequential workflow. Yeah. And also with a command handler, like you issue command, and then command handler, you have to do one thing. Yeah. So yeah, let's have a look at the code. So this is the API controller. So can you read the code? Should I increase the font? Well, okay. So it's ASP.NET Core, and it's a controller. So in the constructor, we inject Mediator, and then so we create customer, which is post. So user sign up the form, and then when the user sign up the form, the Tide call the API, call our API to create a customer, and so we receive the API call. And so let's ignore this bit for now. And after all these things, what it does is, so you construct customer object, and then you do the mediator and send, and then you do the create customer command. So you send create customer command, and you have the create customer command handler. And in the handler, so handler, this create customer command handler does only one thing, that is create customer in the database. So in handle, and so we have a repository and get the customer, and if the customer doesn't exist, then so the repository, the create customer in the database, SQL Server, and then it publish event, which is customer created event, which is our domain event. And then it returned the result that, hey, it was successfully done. Does it make sense? Yeah. So what we did is, so this bit, so create customer command comes, so and then we handle it, and then we raise the customer created domain event. Okay, and then what happens? So like we issued a customer created event, and now this one goes to customer created event handler. So let's have a look. So customer created handler. So okay. One difference you can see is, so if we want to publish event, then use a mediator.publish. If you want to send a command, then you do mediator.send. Is where the controller was. So you can see the difference. Yeah. And this event handler, so it's simple. So, and when that event happens, so we issue two commands. So we raise customer created event command. So this command will raise integration event to notify other systems. And second bit is send check customer identity command. Okay. And so what happens if with raise customer created event command? Okay, so not this one. So let's have a look. This one simply just raise integration event, and let's have a look the second one. Check customer identity command. So in handler, so we inject repository and mediator, and so it does. So with the identity repository, so it tries to get identity, and if our identity is not found, that means it's a new identity. So we need to create a new identity, and it send create identity command. And if the identity already exists, then we send update identity command. Okay. Yeah. So with this, so we covered raise integration event and check customer identity and create a new identity and update a new identity command. Okay, so then let's say what happens if update identity command is issued. Then in the handler, so we simply in the repository, so we update the identity. So if we see the identity class, So simply identity has identity ID and it has list of customers. So whenever new customer added with the same identity, then it's added to the collection. Any question about the code so far? Yeah.
Is there any warning or anything to stop you from creating loops of messages or events all the time?
Yeah, so yeah, we are going to cover about the validation soon. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, so, talked about the domain there. Have you got the different boundaries of microservices as well? So,
Yeah.
so is that, do they do like customer service and identity service?
So
Is it broken up into that level?
so definitely it's in our backlog. Like at the moment, the customer service and identity service are the same. They reside in the same service, and then so we created. So we did it in the same service, and then as we add more features and more stuff, and then we are planning to split it. But so far, like it was working well. So yeah. Any other question?
How does Mediator deal with that? Because you've got two bounded contexts.
Yeah.
So then you have to find a medium between.
So the mediator is the in-memory, the in-memory service. So actually, they like a
Process broker?
yeah, process broker. Yes, sir, process broker. So it runs in the same the process. So so they are not really different bounded contexts at the moment. Later, when we split the identity service into another service, probably then we need to start raising the integration event. But at the moment, yeah, they are in the same service. Yeah, okay. So we built an API. But when you build the API, like there are practical issues. So I don't want this talk to be just about all theories and airy-fairy stuff. And then actually when you try to use it, then it's useless. So when we do this, actually there are some practical issues. So let's talk about it. So first, as a gentleman pointed out, the validation issue. So how are we going to validate the inputs and where? So so because we tried to use the domain-driven design, so we had two different validation. The first validation is we use a domain object. So you can't create a custom object if your inputs are not correct. And for example, your first name is empty, then you can't create the object. And also your postcode is empty, or your city or county name, both of them are empty, then also you can't create the address object. But there are some more complex validation. For example, when you call the API with the same customer ID or same customer, then you don't want to create another entity. You want to return like a conflict, or sometimes you want to return like a not found if like you want to retrieve a customer that doesn't exist. So in those cases, the validation involves the database interaction. So in that case, we put the validation logic in the command handler. So if we go back to so we put the validation in the API call, and also we put the validation in create customer. So let's have a look at the code together. Okay. Let's have a look at the customer object. So customer object has a few the sub-resource of the value object. For example, the customer name, and customer name has a title, first name, last name, and it returns this the generic, the operation result class. So simply, so if title is empty or first name, last name empty, then it returns like errors. Yeah. So if we go back to controller, so first you try to create customer name, the static factory method, and if the name result is the error, then you return the bad request. The same thing happens with the address. If the address is not valid, then you can't create the address object. The operation status is error, then you return the bad request again. And the contact as well. Contact has a mobile, the mobile number and the email address. So this is my sample code. So in the real code, like we validate everything and then send the errors all together. We aggregate all the errors. But here, just I returned it just one by one. Does it make sense? Yeah.
I've got a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So if you are processing a command,
yeah,
then obviously it makes sense to return errors to the person creating the command.
Yeah.
If you're further in and you're, say, a couple of levels of pub sub in,
yeah,
where should the error go? Or should the subscriber always eat the errors, or should it be passing stuff up a supervision hierarchy, like you'd have with Airbag or something?
Yeah. So all the validation code are in the command handlers. So event happens when actually things happen, but so we can't do any validation in event handler. But we put and all our command handlers return the generic operation, the operation status, operation result object. So you can check whether it's a successful or failure, or it has any error messages. Does it answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So your event handlers are always total.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And then, so when you pass all the validations, then finally now, so you have a valid name, valid address, valid contact. So now you can create a customer. So in domain-driven design, like you can't create a domain object with an invalid input. So once the object is created, it's guaranteed to be valid. And okay, and then now you pass the customer into the create customer command. And let's have a look at this create customer command again. And so you can see there is one more validation. So first we try to get the customer first. And if the customer already exists, then you can't create a customer again. So this is, so I call it the operation validation because it involves a database. And sometimes the operation validation, it can call another API if you need to. It's not recommended, but also it may call, it may send another query command to get the data. So you can do lots of things, but so when the validation involves lots of different data and logic, then yeah, put the validation in the command handler. And so it passed the last validation, so now it can create a customer and it can publish the domain event. Okay. And second issue, so transaction. So because, so how do we decide the transaction scope? Do we put a transaction at the beginning and the transaction should run until we raise, so in this diagram, we raise quite a few integration events and quite a few things happens. So does the transaction should run to the end? Maybe then it may include too many ambient transactions and it may slow down or it may fail too often. So we have to decide those things. And in our case, so we used the SQL Server transaction scope. And so we put the first transaction up to the raising the integration event. So one transaction to create a customer in the database and raise integration event. So if it fails to raise integration event, then the transaction rolls back. And the second transaction we put in the identity. So from the beginning of the creating or updating identity and up to the raising the corresponding event. So here we can see like identity and customer is kind of the two different things. So maybe later we need to split this into two different services. But at the moment they stay in the same house. Any question? And the third one is, so then at which point should the API fail? Like should the API fail when it fails to insert customer in the database? Definitely. But should it fail when it's failing to insert identity? Kind of also we have to decide like at which point we have to fail the API and let the caller to know that you have to call the API again. So that's another the decision we need to make. And it definitely depends on the context and what your customer expects. So here what we did was this was our the failure point. So if the API managed to raise the domain event successfully, then we consider it as a success, and then we just return like a 201 the customer created. Then what happens? What happens? Like okay, so the code raised a domain event, but actually it failed with the identity. There was some issue, some transient error in the SQL Server. So then we will have a discrepancy in our data. Customer exists, but identity doesn't exist. So in order to solve that discrepancy, so we introduced another worker process. So the web server, the ASP.NET Core handles up to the customer created domain event. Actually, it has more details. Like we introduced the outbox pattern, and then there is a separate worker processor keep running, and then if it has customer created event, then it just keeps running and then try to create the identity. If it fails, it keeps retrying. Does it make sense? Yeah? And any questions so far? Yeah.
Yeah. So you've implemented your own retry strategy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So another thing you could do.
Yeah.
Is you could use some kind of log-based program.
Yeah.
Right, and then it just eventually gets processed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes.
Is there a particular reason why you went to the role you wrote?
So when you said I rolled our own, so
you said you've got a separate. You had to write something special as opposed to just having a subscriber to a log.
so the code are the same, but they are not in the same process. So there is the ASP.NET Core process, the web server, and on the other side there is the worker process that keeps running and then checking.
It's polling for customers.
Yeah.
So
Same
you're
thing.
writing your own.
So yeah, yeah. So you can we can use a pulley. So just keep retrying maybe 5 times, or yeah, as you said, maybe we can use a log, or we can use the queue. So yeah. So there are lots of options, and then actually, so we use the SQL table as a kind of queue. Yeah, but it was our just design choice. Yeah. So we are not saying we should go in that way. It's just one of the many options. Yeah. Okay. And any other questions? So in summary, so by using the mediator and event storming, so we could define the events together with business people, and with the help of the mediator, we could translate the events into our code. So we have we speak the same language with the domain expert, and our domain expert doesn't read the code, but our code try to follow the events we described together. So we became more efficient and yeah, less bugs, hopefully. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and so I will put the slide up in maybe Twitter, maybe, yeah, and then also the sample code is on the GitHub, so I will share on probably on the Twitter or anywhere else. Yes. Any question? Oh, yeah.
Your event storming thing.
Yeah.
Was that representative of what you've done, or because we found that ours are, is your company very techy versus I found that ours are very business orientated.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't have so much of the tech stuff.
Yeah.
Other than phone the person up.
Yeah.
Do this,
Yeah. Yeah.
done that.
So definitely this event storming was the trial thing, and also in at ClearBank, each team is quite different, and each team has the autonomous culture. So like when I was in my team, like the team Gecko, like we had a kind of spirit that hey, let's try our best. Let's use anything that works and that can improve our process, our code base, and then we tried it together. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
How did that session go? Was it kind of as you expected, or just from experience with tech guys,
Yeah.
business guys
Mhm.
in the same room?
Yeah.
It
So,
seems differently.
yeah.
Everybody has something to say, and
Yeah.
I know with event storming, from what I can remember, you need to be quite disciplined with it. Like
Yeah, true,
things in the
true,
past,
true.
Just small,
Yeah.
focused events in the
Yeah.
past tech events.
Yeah.
When you're building something that hasn't been built before,
Yeah.
people start racing away with ideas, which is good,
Mhm.
but then sometimes the tech guys can kind of see how it's going because they've
Yeah.
done something similar before, but the business people sometimes don't really understand what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense? I don't know
Yeah,
how
it does. It does. So, first disclaimer is I'm not expert at event storming, and also I don't think my event storming was very exemplary. The session. So, actually, in our event storming session, there were lots of noise, and sometimes we were going into too much details, too much technical details, and sometimes we are talking about the events which were not really necessary. So. So it was more like an iterative approach. So we kind of we got rid of things that not necessary, and also we had to refine some details. So I think we are still in an exploratory stage, and then we try to improve our event storming. So, but yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no,
So yeah. So
similar
yeah,
issues that
yeah,
might
yeah. So yeah, yeah, true, true.
with a smaller group of people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
We didn't really get the answers.
yeah. So my experience is more like we are able to translate the event storming session into our code using the mediator rather than event storming itself. Yes.
Have
Yeah.
you used event storming in a case where there's a complex fulfillment process, between you and the customer, as it were?
How complex?
Well, where there's real choices about business process design to be made. The one thing that worries me about this is it's an invitation to pay for cow parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, not on that type of scale. It was more like new functionality, new features that needed to be built.
Mm-hmm.
There's already existing services, existing domains.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a full kind of end-to-end customer fulfillment e-commerce thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, then that's it. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for your time.